And so we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story. My voice will be a soft companion as you begin to drift toward the quiet tale of a perfect face, a beauty so powerful it became a poison in disguise, a story about the slow, silent price of a flawless porcelain mouse. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this quiet place, you're welcome to leave a soft like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a gentle footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. Your peaceful presence here is, and always will be, more than enough. And if you feel so moved, you could leave a quiet comment, letting me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is there. It's a lovely way to feel the quiet, sleeping world we all share. Alright, let the shadows in your room grow long and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint sound of your own quiet breathing. Pull your blanket just a little closer, and together, let's allow the story to begin. The day is done. The heavy velvet curtains are drawn, muffling the distant, fading sounds of the city. The only light in your bedchamber comes from a single, thick candle, its flame dancing and swaying as if to a silent song, casting long, wavering shadows across the tapestries on the wall. You are sitting at your dressing table, a heavy piece of dark, carved wood. Before you is a mirror. But it's not the kind of mirror we know. There is no perfect, silvered glass here. This is the 16th century. Your mirror is a hand-sized piece of polished steel, set in an ornate frame. It's the best money can buy, yet it offers back only a dim, muddy version of you. Your reflection is soft-focused, mysterious, its edges lost in the gloom. It's a mirror that suggests rather than reveals. And tonight, as you lean closer, the suggestion it makes is one of imperfection. You see a face. It's your face, of course. The skin is healthy, with a natural, subtle flush from the warmth at the nearby hearth. Your cheeks have a hint of a rosy hue, the sign of a life well lived, of good food and clean air. But that is the problem. It looks alive. And in your world, that is not the fashion. It is not the ideal. The ideal is something else entirely. It is a face of pure, startling, uniform white, a complexion like alabaster, like the finest milk, like a fresh fall of snow untouched by any footprint. It is the face you see on the other ladies at court, the ones who glide through the great halls like elegant ghosts. Their faces are serene, immobile canvases of perfect pallor. Beside them, you feel rustic, almost embarrassingly vibrant. You sigh, a small puff of air that briefly clouds the surface of the steel. You remember the words of a visiting duchess just last week, spoken with a thin smile. You have such a wonderful, healthy glow about you, she had said. It was not a compliment. In the coded language of the aristocracy, it was a gentle but firm rebuke. Eye healthy glow is for dairy maids and farmers' daughters. It is the unfortunate mark of someone who has felt the sun on their skin. And the sun, you have been taught, is the great enemy of a noblewoman. It is the ultimate social blunder. Why this obsession with a near-deathly pallor? Historians, centuries from now, will still be gently arguing about this very question. Some will say it was simply the clearest, most undeniable symbol of wealth. Ate and meant you work. You toiled in the fields, your hands in the dirt, your face exposed to the elements, but skin that had never been touched by the sun. That was a billboard for a life of leisure, a life lived entirely within the cool, shadowed walls of grand houses. Others will suggest the reason was deeper, tied to the ancient medical beliefs that still hold sway in your time. They believed a cool, pale complexion signaled a perfect internal balance, a sign of a refined and delicate nature, free from the hot, common passions of the lower classes. And a few scholars will simply argue that you all just wanted to look like the pale marble statues of ancient goddesses that were being unearthed all over Italy. Whatever the true reason, the result is the same in this flickering candlelight. The face you see in the dim mirror your own healthy, living face is not the one you are supposed to have. It is a liability. It speaks of the country, not the court. It whispers of robust health, not of ethereal, untouchable nobility. As you stare into the distorted steel, a longing takes root, a deep, quiet desire to erase the person you see, to paint over the flush of life, to cover the tiny, human imperfections, and to replace it all with a smooth, perfect, impenetrable mask of white. If only there were a way, a secret, a concoction that could bestow such a transformation. You've heard whispers, of course, rumors of a new cosmetic, a miracle paste from the glittering, water-bound city of Venice, that promises exactly this kind of perfection. A whisper of something called Venetian Ceruse. That name, Venetian Ceruse. It hangs in the air of your quiet, candlelit room. A sound that feels both foreign and full of promise. It represents an escape from the tyranny of the face you were born with. And more importantly, an escape from the tyranny of the sun. Because in your world, the sun is not a warm, life-giving friend. It is a relentless artist of the common, a brutal painter that insists on staining everything it touches with a shade of earthy brown. It is, to put it simply, the enemy. Every day is a quiet battle against its intrusions. You wake in a room with heavy drapes. You travel in a carriage with the curtains drawn. You walk under covered colonnades whenever possible. A lady of your standing does not simply stroll through a sun-drenched park. The sun is for laborers, for people whose lives are tied to the earth and the seasons. It is the undeniable mark of a life spent outside, and a life outside is a life of work. The sun is a tireless gossip, and its favorite story to tell is about your family's social standing. A single afternoon spent watching a hawking demonstration without the proper protection could leave a faint, stale flush across your nose and cheeks. It's a temporary mark, but the social stain of it lasts far longer. It suggests you work careless. It suggests you might not have enough servants to ensure you are always shaded. It suggests, in the worst possible way, that you are connected to the physical world, the world of sweat and toil. And so, you have learned the art of avoidance. You know which rooms in your house face north, ushering cool, indirect light throughout the day. You know that the best time for a walk in the garden is in the deep twilight, when the air is cool and the sun is a distant, defeated memory below the horizon, for the rare occasions when you must be out in the daylight. Perhaps for a royal procession or a journey between estates. You have your precautions. You own a mask, but not the sort one wears to a festive ball. It is called a vis-a-vis, a stiff oval of black velvet, utterly featureless except for two small holes for your eyes. It is designed not for intrigue, but for anonymity from the sun, and it has a very peculiar feature, a strange little secret of its construction that few people today would ever guess. It has no strings to tie it around your head. Instead, on the inner side, there is a small glass bead cloth covered button. To wear the mask, you must clench this bead between your teeth. Think about that for a moment. To protect your complexion, you render yourself mute. You walk or ride in public, your face hidden behind a sheet of black, held in place by the firm grip of your own jaw. You cannot speak. You cannot smile. You cannot even part your lips to take a cool drink. It is a small, silent act of self-imprisonment, all in service of maintaining that perfect, untouched pillar. It's a bizarrely common practice, yet another piece of the elaborate armor a noblewoman must wear. Historians, of course, will debate the precise reasons for this solar phobia. Was it purely about class? A straightforward, visual declaration that you were not one of the sun-brown masses? Or was it, as some scholars argue, deeply entangled with the medical philosophies of your time? The prevailing theory of health revolves around the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. The sun, being hot and dry, was believed to have a powerful effect on this delicate internal balance. An overly sun-exposed person might be seen as having an excess of yellow bile, making them choleric, hot-tempered, passionate, and prone to anger. A pale, cool complexion, on the other hand, suggested a more phlegmatic nature, calm, serene, and rational. So a pale face wasn't just a sign of wealth. It was considered evidence of a superior, more refined temperament. The perfect woman was a cool woman, in every sense of the word. But even with all this hiding and shielding, even with your strange, silent masks, the sun is persistent. A sliver of light might find its way through a gap in the carriage curtains. A moment's reflection of a river might catch you unaware, and your own skin, with its natural, living Rossini access, can sometimes feel like a betrayal in itself. You don't just want to prevent a tan. You want to erase the very possibility of one. You need something more than just a shield. You need a weapon. You need an eraser. You need a way to wipe the slate clean every morning, to paint over the living, breathing reality of your skin and replace it with something static, perfect, and unimpeachably noble, and that brings your thoughts back, inevitably, to that whispered name, the promise of an impossible white, delivered from the workshops of Venice. The solution, it seems, is not in hiding from the world, but in painting a new one onto your face. The name, Venetian Ceruse, has become more than just a whisper. It's a low, persistent hum beneath the surface of courtly life, a secret pass between ladies and hushed tones behind feathered fans. You hear it spoken of after a particularly successful ball, when a certain countess appears with a complexion so flawless it seems to have been carved from marble. It must be the Venetian recipe. One lady will murmur to another, a note of pure envy in her voice. Nothing else creates such a luminous finish. This promise of a luminous finish is what captivates you. It's not just about being white. It's about a specific quality of whiteness, a glow that seems to come from within, a soft focused radiance that smooths over every tiny line and flaw, making the wearer look like a living, breathing work of art. The rumors say it comes from Venice, that floating city of intrigue and trade, a place known for its exotic goods, its skilled artisans, and its beautiful, mysterious women. Venice, at this moment in history, is the capital of cosmetics. It is the Paris of its day, setting the trends that the rest of Europe scrambles to follow. And so, you decide, you must have it. Acquiring such a thing is not a simple matter of walking to a shop. There are no brightly lit department stores with smiling attendants. Procuring a coveted substance like genuine Venetian Ceruse is a clandestine affair, a task for a trusted agent or a well-connected lady's maid. You send a message, discreetly, through a network of contacts, a merchant whose ship strayed in the Adriatic, a cousin whose husband has dealings with Venetian bankers. It feels illicit, exciting, like commissioning a secret love potion. Weeks pass. The seasons begin their slow turn, and then, one afternoon, it arrives, not in a grand chest, but in a small, unassuming wooden box, delivered by a messenger who says nothing and leaves as silently as he came. Inside the box, nestled in a bed of soft, dark cloth, is a small, heavy pot made of lead or pewter. It is cool to the touch. You lift the lid. What you see inside is almost anticlimactic. It's just a dense, white, waxy cake. It looks like a solidified block of lard, perfectly smooth on top. It has a faint, almost sweet, but slightly metallic smell. This is it, the legendary Ceruse, the key to unlocking a new version of yourself. The pot is heavy for its size, a satisfying weight in your hand. This density, you feel, is a sign of its quality, its potency. You are not entirely naive about what might be in it. In your era, cosmetics and medicine are strange, intertwined arts. The line between a healing balm and a beauty treatment is blurry at best. You've heard people use all sorts of peculiar things on their skin. Ointments made from crushed pearls, face masks of ass's milk. Even bombs containing mercury, a substance you know is used to treat certain unpleasant diseases. The world is full of strange recipes and old wives' tales. Historians will later marvel at the sheer audacity of Renaissance cosmetic formulas, which often read more like a sorcerer's inventory than a beauty regimen. Some recipes for face creams from your period include things like calves' hooves, boiled in water for days. It's a world where beauty is very much an experimental science. So the thought that this miraculous white paste might contain something unusual is not entirely alarming. In fact, it almost adds to its mystique. Potent remedies require potent ingredients. That's just common sense. The most effective medicines often have the strongest tastes or the most dramatic effects. Why should the most effective cosmetic be any different? The debate over the safety of these Italian ointments, as they're often called, is a quiet but persistent one. While many, like you, see them as a gift from the sophisticated continent, others view them with suspicion. Moralists and religious figures preach against the vanity of painting one's face, calling it an affront to God's creation. They whisper that these foreign concoctions are tricks of the devil, designed to create a false illusion of beauty while corrupting the soul. Some even suggest they are poisons, a popular accusation to level against anything Italian in this age of political rivalries. This argument over whether cosmetics are a harmless enhancement or a dangerous poison is a recurring theme. Scholars of the future will point to this as an early, embryonic form of consumer protection debate, with one side championing personal choice and the other raising concerns about unknown ingredients. But sitting here, in the privacy of your chamber, with the heavy little pot in your hands, those warnings feel distant and irrelevant. They are the grumblings of sour-faced men who do not understand the pressures a woman of your station faces. They do not understand the currency of beauty, the power that resides in a flawless face. They do not understand that at the next royal banquet, no one will be admiring the purity of your soul. They will be judging the purity of your complexion. The promise of this little pot is tangible. It is the promise of walking into that banquet hall and seeing every head turn. The promise of silencing the condescending whispers of the other ladies. The promise of earning an approving nod from the Queen herself. The ultimate arbiter of taste and fashion. This small cake of white paste is not just makeup. It is power, condensed into a solid, waxy film. You dip a finger into the pot. The substance is dense, oily, and surprisingly cool. It's time to see what a whisper from Venice can truly do. The texture of the Ceruse is unlike anything you've felt before. It's dense and smooth, a bit like cold cream but heavier, more substantial. As you rub a small amount between your thumb and forefinger, it softens with the warmth of your skin, becoming a spreadable, opaque paste. That faint, sweet, metallic scent becomes a little more noticeable. It's the smell of alchemy, of transformation. You feel a thrill of anticipation, the kind an artist must feel before making the first mark on a pristine canvas. But what exactly is this miraculous substance? If you could peer into the alchemical workshops of Venice where it was made, you would not see a pristine, hygienic laboratory. You would see a grimy, fire-stained room, filled with bubbling vats and the acrid smell of chemical reactions. The creation of Venetian Ceruse, or spirits of Saturn as it was sometimes poetically known, was a messy, unpleasant, and surprisingly slow process. The primary ingredient is lead, not just any lead, but thin plates or shavings of it. The alchemists, who were the chemists and industrial manufacturers of your day, would take these lead plates and place them on racks inside a large ceramic pot. At the bottom of this pot, they would pour a quantity of strong vinegar or sometimes even stale wine. The idea was to expose the lead to the acidic vapors of the vinegar without it actually touching the liquid. They would then seal the pot, making it airtight, and place it in a warm, dark place to ferment. Often, this meant burying the pots in a large pile of horse manure. The decomposing manure provided a steady, gentle heat over a long period, which was believed to be essential for the reaction to occur. It's a detail that is both wonderfully bizarre and perfectly logical for the time. Horse manure was the air's equivalent of a slow-minus cooker or a temperature-minus controlled water bath. For weeks, sometimes months, the pots would sit there, buried in their warm, odorous bed, inside each silent, sealed world. A slow, magical transformation was taking place. The acidic vapor from the vinegar would rise and react with the surface of the lead. A chemical process, which we now know as corrosion, would begin. The acid would slowly eat away at the metal, causing a white, flaky crust to form on the surface of the plates. Finally, the day would come to unearth the pots. The alchemists would break the seals and open them up. The vinegar would be mostly gone, and the lead plates would be covered in a thick, white coating. This was the restorative. They would then scrape this white powder off the lead plates, a dusty, hazardous job you're fortunate not to witness. The resulting powder was then ground into an incredibly fine dust, often between heavy millstones, and washed repeatedly to remove any remaining acidity from the vinegar. The result of this strange, pungent process was a brilliant white powder lead carbonate. It was prized for two reasons. First, its whiteness was exceptionally opaque and vibrant. Second, the particles were incredibly fine and smooth, which made it feel silky on the skin. It was, chemically speaking, a perfect pigment. But the recipe didn't always stop there. The finest Venetian Ceruse was known for its secret, proprietary formulas. Alchemists and cosmetic artisans would add their own special ingredients to the base powder to improve its texture and scent. A common addition was a small amount of scented oil to make it smell more pleasant and to help it bind together. But there was another, far more dangerous, ingredient often mixed in white arsenic. Yes, you heard that right, arsenic. It was added for a very specific reason. While the lead provided the whiteness, arsenic was believed to give the final product a certain pearlescent quality, a subtle, silvery sheen that caught the light. It also acted as a potent preservative, preventing the oils in the mixture from going rancid. The exact recipes were closely guarded secret, and historians still debate the prevalence of certain additives. Some surviving texts suggest all manner of strange additions, from ground bone to talc, but the combination of lead and arsenic seems to have been a disturbingly popular one for the most exclusive brands. It was a cocktail of heavy metals, a true poison sold as a beauty enhancer. This bizarre manufacturing process highlights a curious aspect of your era's understanding of materials. Lead, known to alchemists as Saturn, was considered a dull and melancholy metal. They believed that through processes like this, they were helping it along its journey of maturation, pushing it one step closer to its ultimate, perfect form gold. In their worldview, corroming lead with acid wasn't just a chemical reaction. It was a philosophical act of purification. They thought they were elevating a base substance, turning something dark and heavy into something light and beautiful. And in a way, they succeeded. They had taken a dull, grey metal, fermented it in horse dung, and produced a pot of what looks and feels like pure, pearlescent magic. As you sit before your mirror, you are holding the final product of this strange, ultra journey. You are holding the alchemist's strange recipe in your hands, completely unaware of the true nature of its power. You only know that it promises to make you beautiful. The time has come. The quiet anticipation in your chamber is thick enough to touch. You have the tool this potent, mysterious pace, and you have the canvas your own face, waiting in the dim reflection of the polished steel mirror. The process of applying it is a ritual, a slow and deliberate act of transformation that you will come to repeat every single day. It is, quite literally, the painting of a human canvas. You begin by preparing your skin. You wash your face with rose water, a gentle astringent that leaves your skin feeling cool and clean. You pat it dry with a soft linen cloth. Then, you reach for the little pot of Ceruse. Using a small spatula made of ivory or bone, you scoop out a small amount of the thick, white paste. You don't just smear it all. That would be crude, and it wouldn't achieve the desired effect. The goal is a perfectly smooth, seamless layer of white, with no brush-strokes, no streaks, and no hint of the skin beneath. To achieve this, you first warm the Ceruse slightly, perhaps in a small dish set near the candle flame, until it becomes softer and more pliable. Then, you begin to apply it, section by section. You start with your forehead, dabbing small amounts of the white paste across your skin. Then, using the pads of your fingers, you begin to gently spread it, working it into every tiny pore and crevice. The paste is cool at first, a surprisingly pleasant sensation. It feels medicinal, soothing. It glides over your skin, and the effect is immediate and dramatic. In the flickering candlelight, you watch as your natural skin tone simply vanishes. The healthy flush, the subtle variations in color, the tiny imperfections, they all disappear under a uniform, opaque blanket of white. It's like pulling a pristine sheet over a messy bed. The coverage is astonishing. You work your way down, over your nose, across your cheeks, carefully avoiding your eyebrows and the delicate skin around your eyes. The process is slow and methodical. You are not just applying makeup. You are creating a new surface, a mask that is not worn, but bonded to your very skin. The Ceruse has a thick, slightly sticky quality, which helps it adhere. You can feel it settling, creating a firm, matte layer. You continue down to your chin, and then, importantly, you don't stop at your jawline. That would create an unsightly line, a dead giveaway that your complexion is not your own. The application must continue down your neck and across your upper chest, the area of skin left exposed by the fashionable low neckline of your dress. You must become a seamless sculpture of white from your décolleté to your hairline. Once the first layer is applied, you assess your work in the dim mirror. It's a start. But for a truly aristocratic finish, one layer is often not enough. You wait a few moments for it to set, and then you apply a second layer, and sometimes, for grand occasions, even a third. Each layer builds upon the last, deepening the whiteness, increasing the opacity, until your face, lip, and chest are a single, unbroken field of alabaster. This layering process is one of those small, intimate details that history often forgets. We see the portraits with their stark white faces, but we don't think about the physical sensation of it. Imagine the weight. It's not a light dusting of powder. It is a substantial, tangible coating. As it dries, it tightens on your skin, restricting your natural facial expressions. A wide, spontaneous smile would risk cracking the perfect finish. A hearty laugh is out of the question. The mask demands a certain stillness, a serene, placid expression that just so happens to align perfectly with the noble ideal of a calm and composed demeanor. Your makeup is now training your face how to behave. Some historians debate whether Ceruse was worn as a thick, plus-or-minus-like coating or a more subtle wash. The evidence from portraits and contemporary accounts suggests both were true, likely depending on the occasion, the wealth of the wearer, and the desired effect. The courtly look, the one you are striving for, was almost certainly the thick, opaque mask. It was a statement. It wasn't meant to look natural. It was meant to look artificial, to look like art. As a final touch, you might take a soft cloth or a piece of leather and gently buff the dried surface of the Ceruse, much like you would polish a piece of furniture. This removes any excess powder and creates that coveted, luminous, soft-minded sheen finish. The result is breathtaking. You lean back to admire your handiwork. The person staring back at you from the polished steel is transformed. Gone is the uncertain woman with the healthy, rustic glow. In her place is a figure of immense poise and gravity. Your face is no longer a collection of features. It is a single, unified statement. It is a mask of power, of wealth, of untouchable status. The tightness on your skin feels like a suit of armor. You feel protected, formidable. You feel perfect. You have successfully painted over the living, breathing human, and in her place, You have created a goddess, or so it seems, in the forgiving light of a single, flickering candle. You gaze at your reflection, a masterpiece of white. The surface is smooth, opaque, and flawless. But the art of the perfect Renaissance face doesn't end with a simple layer of CERU. The white base is just a foundation, the prepared gesso on the canvas. To complete the look, to bring the art to life, you need to add back some carefully chosen details. And this is where the cosmetic chemistry gets even more peculiar. The first and most important addition is a touch of color to the cheeks and lip. A pure, ghostly white face could look a bit too much like an actual ghost, which wasn't quite the goal. The ideal was a living statue look. And for that, you needed a hint of blush. You reach for another small, ornate pot. Inside is a vibrant red powder or paste. The primary ingredient for this blush is often vermilion, a brilliant scarlet pigment. It's beautiful. It's also made from grinding up the mineral cinnabar, which is a mercury sulfide. So, to bring a healthy glow back to your lead-covered cheeks, you are now dabbing them with a dose of mercury. You apply it sparingly, a small circle of red high on the cheekbones, a look you see in all the finest portraits. It's not meant to be blended or look natural. It's a deliberate, stylized splash of color, like a painter's accent on a white background. The same red paste is used for your lips. You apply it carefully, painting a perfect, small, crimson bow. The fashion is not for full, wide lips, but for a small, neat mouth, so you often paint within the natural lines of your own lips, making them appear smaller and more delicate. The contrast of the bright red against the stark white is dramatic and arresting. But what about the eyes? Heavy eye makeup as we know it is not in fashion. The focus is entirely on the luminous, pale skin. However, the eyebrows need attention. Sometimes, the thick layer of CERU can partially obscure them. To fix this, you might use a fine brush and a dark powder often made from coal or even simple soot to redraw and define your brows. The fashionable shape is a high, thin, perfect arch. In some extreme cases, ladies would pluck their eyebrows out completely and simply paint on the ideal shape. It saved time in the morning. This brings us to one of the stranger, and often debated, aspects of the CERU mask, its hidden flaws and the odd remedies used to counteract them. While the lead carbonate provided a beautiful white finish, it had a tendency to be chemically unstable. Over time, or when exposed to certain conditions, it could react and change color. One of the biggest culprits was any form of sulfur in the air. The smoke from a coal fire, the fumes from certain industrial processes, even the gases from rudimentary sewage systems could react with the lead in the makeup. And what happens when lead carbonate meets sulfur? It turns black. A noblewoman might spend hours creating her perfect white face, only to find it developing unsightly gray or black patches after sitting too close to a fire or walking through a certain part of the city. It was a cosmetic nightmare. This led to a whole secondary market of products and quick fixes. One documented remedy was to carry a small kit with a liquid wash made of, and this is true, a solution of sulfur and water. The idea was that, if your face started to turn black, you could quickly apply the sulfur wash, which would, through another chemical reaction, turn the black lead sulfide back into a white lead sulfate. You would essentially be performing a chemical experiment on your own face to keep your makeup fresh. This is a point that historians love to discuss. How common was this discoloration? Was it a daily struggle or a rare mishap? The very existence of these remedies suggests it was a known problem. It adds a layer of high-stakes absurdity to the whole beauty routine. Imagine the constant, low-grade anxiety of knowing you're perfect. High-status face could, at any moment, start to inexplicably tarnish. Furthermore, the mixture of lead and arsenic had another odd side effect. It was, in essence, a very effective paint. Unlike paint, it was not good for the delicate hairs of the face. The constant application of this toxic paste on and around the eyebrows and hairline often had an unintended consequence. It acted as a chemical depilatory. The hair follicles would be damaged by the heavy metals, causing the hair to thin and fall out. This is why you see so many portraits from this era where the women have incredibly high foreheads and very thin, sparse eyebrows. While a high forehead was considered a mark of beauty and intelligence, many scholars believe this fashion was heavily encouraged by the simple fact that their makeup was making their hair fall out. They weren't just plucking their hairlines to be fashionable. Their hairlines were actively receding, and they simply embraced it as the new ideal. It's a perfect example of making a bug into a feature. So now your transformation is complete. Your face is a white canvas of lead. Your cheeks and lips are a bright crimson of mercury. Your eyebrows are defined with soot. You are a walking work of art, a chemical cocktail of beauty. The mask is heavy, rigid, and smells faintly of metal and perfume. It is stunning, and it is, from a modern perspective, utterly terrifying. But as you look in the mirror, you see only success. You have conquered nature and imposed upon it a superior, more beautiful, and far more fashionable ideal. Your newly perfected face, this mask of white and crimson, is more than just a personal choice. It is a statement of allegiance. An allegiance to the prevailing culture, to the highest echelons of society, and, most importantly, to your queen. In the landscape of late 16th century England, one face reigns supreme, not just politically, but aesthetically, the face of Queen Elizabeth I, and she is the ultimate, and most famous, devotee of the Ceruse mask. To understand the power of this trend, you have to understand the power of Elizabeth. She is not just a monarch, she is a phenomenon, a carefully constructed icon. In a world ruled by men, she has crafted an image of herself that is both powerful and untouchable. She is the Virgin Queen, a figure of almost divine authority, and her physical appearance is a crucial part of this branding. Every portrait, every public appearance, is meticulously managed, and the centerpiece of this image is her famous, unchanging, stark white face. You see her portraits circulated throughout the kingdom. Engravings and paintings show her draped in pearls and impossibly elaborate gowns, but it is the face that commands attention. It is a perfect oval of pure, flat white, with bright red lips and cheeks, under a halo of fiery red hair. Her expression is serene, serious, and otherworldly. She does not look like a regular woman. She looks like an effigy, a symbol, and that is entirely the point. Her use of Ceruse was not a secret. It was a core part of her public identity. By adopting the same look, you and the other ladies of the court are not just following a fashion trend. You are engaging in a political act. You are mirroring your queen, showing your loyalty and your place within her circle. Your white face becomes a part of the grand theatre of the Elizabethan court, a uniform that signifies you are one of the elite, one of the queen's own. She is the sun around which you all orbit, and you reflect her light, or in this case, her startling whiteness. But why was Elizabeth so committed to this look? The story most people know is that she used it to cover up smallpox scars. As a young woman, in 1562, she contracted the disease, and for a time, it was feared she would not survive. She did, but the illness left her face pocked with scars. In an age where a monarch's physical body was seen as a reflection of the health of the state, these scars were a political liability. They were a reminder of mortality, of weakness. The thick, opaque layer of Venetian Ceruse was the perfect solution. It did not just cover the scars. It obliterated them, creating a smooth, flawless surface. It was a physical manifestation of her ability to overcome adversity, to erase the blemishes of the past and present a face of unwavering strength. This is the popular and widely accepted history. However, some historians propose a slightly different timeline. They argue that the heavy mask of youth, as it came to be known, became more pronounced as she aged. They suggest that while the smallpox scars were an initial reason, The true motivation in her later years was the relentless pursuit of agelessness. As she grew older, the layers of Ceruse grew thicker. The painted minus on youth became more and more stylized, more and more artificial. It was her way of halting time, of remaining the eternal virgin queen, forever fixed in her prime. The academic debate here is subtle but important. Was the makeup primarily to hide scars, or to hide age? Most likely, it was a bit of both. A convenient solution that served purposes at once. One of the most curious and telling anecdotes about the Queen's makeup comes from a man named Sir John Harrington, her godson, who was known for his witty and often irreverent observations. He wrote about seeing the Queen in her private chambers, without her full public face on. He noted that without the paint, she appeared to be a very old woman, revealing the stark difference between the public icon and the private person. This observation, made by someone in her inner circle, confirms just how much of a transformative mask the Ceruse really was. There's another little minus known aspect of her beauty routine that adds another layer of strangeness. To enhance the illusion of youth, Elizabeth, like many of her contemporaries, would use eye drops to make her eyes sparkle. The active ingredient in these drops, belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, it worked by dilating the pupils, creating a wide minus side. Though minus-like look that was considered very attractive. It also, of course, blurred vision and, being a potent neurotoxin, was yet another poison being willingly administered for the sake of beauty. So the Queen's iconic look was a combination of a leaden arsenic face, mercury lips, and nightshade eyes. A true chemical queen. Her influence cannot be overstated. She made the Ceruse face the gold standard of beauty and power for decades. To be a lady at her court was to be a lady with a white face. To reject her would be to reject the aesthetic of her reign. It would be like a modern courtier showing up to a state dinner in jeans and a T-minus shirt. It was simply not done. So as you smooth the last layer of your own Ceruse, you feel a connection to her, your formidable monarch. Your mask is a smaller version of her mouse. Your ritual mirrors her ritual. You are participating in the great, silent, visual language of the Elizabethan age. A language written in lead and mercury. A language whose grammar was dictated by one of the most powerful women in history. With your face now a perfect imitation of the Queen's iconic pallor, you are ready to enter society. You leave the private, candlelit world of your bedchamber and step into the brighter, more public spaces of the court. And here, you see that you are not alone. Far from it. You are now part of a sea of white faces. The look is so pervasive among the upper classes that it has become less of a choice and more of a uniform. Walking through the great hall of a palace or attending a banquet, you see them everywhere, the wives and daughters of dukes, pearls, and barons, all sharing the same startling complexion. Their faces, like yours, are serene, white canvases, accented with those precise touches of red on the lips and cheeks. From a distance, it creates a powerful and slightly unnerving effect. A crowd of noblewomen looks like a gathering of beautiful, identical dolls. There is a strange sense of conformity, an erasure of individuality in favor of a single, shared ideal of beauty. This uniform of white served a very clear social purpose. It was an instant, non-minus verbal signal of who belonged and who did not. In a society that was rigidly hierarchical, visual cues were everything. The moment you entered a room, your clothes, your jewels, and most importantly, your face, told everyone exactly where you stood in the social pecking order. A face treated with expensive Venetian Ceruse was a clear sign that you were part of the inner circle. It was the membership card to the exclusive club of the elite. Imagine a newcomer to court. Perhaps a young woman from a minor noble family in the countryside. She arrives with her face scrubbed clean, her skin holding the healthy glow you so recently despised in yourself. She might be wearing a beautiful gown and her family's best pearls, but as she walks into the great hall, she would feel an immediate and overwhelming sense of being an outsider. Her natural face, surrounded by the sea of artificial white, would look shockingly plain, almost vulgar. She would be marked instantly as provincial and unsophisticated. The pressure to conform, to adopt the white mask, would be immense. It was the price of admission. This pressure created a booming market, not just for the genuine Venetian Ceruse, but for cheaper, local imitations. Not every noble family could afford the imported, high-end product with its secret, pearlescent additives. This led to the creation of countless local recipes for skin whiteness, often called English Ceruse or simply face paint. These were typically cruder versions of the same basic idea. They still used lead, but perhaps it was less finely ground, or it was mixed with less refined ingredients like chalk or powdered bone to stretch the expensive pigment. The result was a kind of tiered system of white faces. You could almost tell the status of a woman by the quality of her pallor. A top-tier duchess would have that luminous, smooth, Venetian glow. A lady from a less wealthy family might have a whiteness that was slightly chalky, less radiant, perhaps a bit thicker and more paste-like. Historians still debate the specifics of this cosmetic hierarchy, but the commercial logic is undeniable. Wherever there is a luxury product, a market for knock-offs will always emerge. It's a timeless rule of commerce. The existence of these cheaper alternatives proves just how non-negotiable the white face had become. If you couldn't afford the best, you still had to make do with something. Any white was better than no white at all. There's a strange and fascinating detail from this period: the use of veins as a finishing touch. After applying the perfect layer of white Ceruse, some women would take a fine brush dipped in a blue or purple pigment and delicately trace the faint lines of veins on their temples, neck, and hands. The logic was perverse but clear. If your skin was so either really pale and translucent, then naturally one would be able to see the blue blood beneath. It was the ultimate status symbol. A painted minus on proof of your blue-blooded aristocratic heritage. It was taking the artifice to its most extreme and literal conclusion, painting a biological impossibility onto the skin to reinforce a social one. The uniform of white was so entrenched that it became a staple of portraiture. When a wealthy patron commissioned a portrait, they weren't asking for a realistic depiction of their wife or daughter. They were asking for a portrait of her status. The artist's job was not to capture her unique personality through the subtle tones of her skin, but to render her in the official visual language of the elite. That meant a smooth, white, blemish-free face. Even if a woman didn't wear Ceruse every single day, her official portrait almost certainly would depict her as if she did. The portraits were not just capturing a person, they were capturing an ideal, and that ideal was white. As you move through the court, you feel a sense of belonging. Your face is your passport, stamped with the official seal of approval. You exchange knowing glances with other women, a silent acknowledgement of the shared ritual you all performed that morning. You are part of the cast in this grand play. But as you catch your reflection in a polished silver platter, you see not your own face, but the face of your class, the uniform, and for a fleeting moment, you might wonder who the person is, hiding somewhere underneath it all. Dressed in this uniform of white, you begin to feel a change in how you carry yourself, and in how others react to you. There is an undeniable power that comes with wearing this mask. The power of pallor is not just about fitting in. It's about projecting an aura of authority, mystique, and untouchable grace. As you walk through the crowded corridors of the palace, you notice people make way for you more readily. Servants lower their eyes. Men of a slightly lower station offer a deeper bow. Your face, in its serene, artificial perfection, acts as a kind of social shield. It discourages familiarity. It creates a subtle but palpable distance between you and the rest of the world. No one would dare to engage in casual banter with a woman who looks like a marble effigy come to life. Your expression, held in place by the tightening Ceruse, is one of calm, detached mobility. Whether you feel calm and noble on the inside is entirely irrelevant. The mask is doing all the work for you. This newfound confidence is intoxicating. You enter a room, and you feel the gazes upon you are not of judgment, but of admiration, and perhaps a little fear. The other ladies who have mastered the art of the Ceruse face greet you with a cool, appraising nod. You are one of them. You have understood the assignment. The anxieties you once felt about your healthy country glow have vanished, painted over with a thick layer of lead carbonate. You have, in essence, leveled up in the complex game of courtly life. The mask also grants you a strange kind of freedom, because your face is so stylized, so obviously a work of artifice. It deflects personal scrutiny. People are not looking at your moods, your small imperfections, the tales of a sleepless night. They are looking at the image you have created. It's a form of emotional armor. You can hide your true feelings behind the serene, unchanging facade. Are you nervous? Good. Annoyed? No one can tell. Your faces are perfect, placid slate. This allows you to navigate the treacherous social waters of the court with a new sense of control. You are no longer a person. You are a presence. This effect was not just a happy accident. It was deeply intertwined with the philosophical and social ideals of your time. The concept of SPR as it URA, made popular by Baldassare Castiglione's The Book of the Courtier, was highly influential. SPR as it URA is the art of making the difficult look effortless. It is a kind of studied carelessness, a cultivated grace that hides all the work and effort that went into it. Your CE, minus covered face is the ultimate expression of SPR as it URA. It presents an image of flawless, effortless nobility, while completely concealing the hours of painstaking application, the expensive and dangerous ingredients, and the constant anxiety of keeping the mask intact. It is a performance of perfection. Now for a slightly more bizarre and less glamorous source of power, the smell. While the finest Venetian Ceruse was oft unscented with oils of rose or jasmine, the base ingredients lead, vinegar, sometimes arsenic had their own underlying metallic odor. Furthermore, the Ceruse was often mixed with egg whites or other binders that didn't age well over the course of a long evening in a warm, crowded room. The result was that a gathering of heavily made minus-up nobles often had a unique and not entirely pleasant aroma. One contemporary writer, the satirist Thomas Tuke, scathingly described women's painted faces as varnished and plastered over and smelling like the mud wall of a beggar's cottage. So where's the power in that? It's the power of olfactory dominance. In an age before daily bathing was common, everyone was accustomed to a certain level of human aroma, but the chemical scent of a fully made minus-up noblewoman was something else entirely. It was artificial, powerful, and utterly distinct. It announced her presence in a room before she was even seen. It was the smell of wealth, the smell of artifice, the smell of someone who could afford to alter their very chemistry. Historians still debate the true scent of an Elizabethan court, but the idea that the elite smelled not of soap and water, but of leaden perfume, is a compelling one. It's another layer of the sensory armor they wore. As the evening wears on, you feel the physical reality of the mask more intensely. It is heavy, your skin feels tight. You are acutely aware that a wrong move, a misplaced dab of a napkin, an over-minus enthusiastic greeting could smudge or crack your masterpiece. This constant low-minus-level awareness forces a kind of physical discipline upon you. You move more slowly, more deliberately. Your gestures become more measured and graceful. Not necessarily by choice, but by necessity. The mask is training your body, just as it trained your face. You are powerful. You are admired. You are in control. The Ceruse has given you everything it promised. As you catch your cool, white reflection in a passing window, you feel a surge of satisfaction. The investment, the effort, the risk, it all feels worth it. You have achieved the pinnacle of beauty and status. From the outside, your life is perfect, but under the flawless, careful, painted surface, a silent, invisible process has already begun. The season passes in a whirl of banquets, dances, and formal appearances. Your new face has become your trusted companion, your daily armor. The ritual of applying it is now second nature, a familiar and almost comforting start to your day. You've become so accustomed to the serene, white visage in the mirror that the memory of your old, natural face has started to fade. Like a dream upon waking, the mask is no longer a mask. It's just your face. But then, one evening, you notice something. It's a small thing, easily dismissed. As you are preparing for bed, you go through the laborious process of removing the Ceruse. This is no simple task of washing your face with soap and water. The lead-based paint is oily and stubborn. It requires a specific routine. You might use a scraper made of bone to gently lift off the thickest layers, followed by cloths soaked in a mixture of ass's milk, or perhaps mercury mixed with eggshells and alum, another charmingly toxic concoction designed to strip the paint away. As the last of the white is cleansed from your skin, you lean close to your polished steel mirror, the candlelight flickering. Your skin feels raw and sensitive from the harsh cleaning process, and you see it. On your cheek, near your nose, is a small patch of skin that looks different. It's not a spot or a blemish in the usual sense. It's an area where the skin seems thinner, drier, almost papery. It has a slight grayish, almost bruised looking undertone. It's the first unseen blemish. You touch it, the skin feels strangely rough and lifeless compared to the rest of your face. You frown, and a wave of anxiety washes over you. What is this? Is it a rash? A reaction to the new French soap you tried? You dismiss it as a temporary irritation. You apply a soothing balm of rose water and cucumber, blow out the candle, and climb into bed, willing it to be gone by morning. But it isn't. The next morning, the strange, discolored patch is still there. If anything, it looks a little angrier, a little more pronounced in the cool light of dawn. Panic begins to prickle at the edges of your composure. This is a disaster. Your entire social standing is built upon the idea of a flawless complexion. A blemish like this, if it were seen, could unravel everything. There is, of course, only one solution. A quick, easy, an obvious one. You turn to your dressing table and reach for the familiar, heavy pot of Venetian Ceruse. With a sense of renewed purpose, you begin your morning ritual. You scoop out the cool, white paste and begin to apply it. As you spread the thick layer over the offending patch, you feel a weight of relief. The grayish, papery skin vanishes. The blemish is gone. Your face is once again a perfect, unbroken canvas of white, carbon soul. Or so you think. What you are experiencing is the very first sign of the poison's insidious work. Lead, when applied directly to the skin, doesn't just sit on the surface. It is slowly absorbed into the body. But its most immediate effect is on the skin itself. It is a powerful astringent, and it begins to damage the underlying tissues. It dries the skin out, eats away at the healthy layers, and causes a form of localized decay. The blemish you saw was not a rash. It was the first sign of your own skin beginning to corrode. This is the beginning of the trap. The Ceruse is causing the very problem that it so perfectly hides. The more you use it, the more damage it does to your skin underneath. And the more damage it does, the more you need to use the Ceruse to cover it up. It's a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. A gilded cage you are building for yourself, one layer of white paint at a time. This early stage of sky damage is a topic of some debate among medical historians. How quickly did it set in? And were the women of the time aware of what was causing it? Some scholars argue that the connection was obvious, and that women made a conscious, risky trade of sacrificing their real skin for a perfect painted one. Others believe that in an era with a limited understanding of dermatology, they simply wouldn't have connected the miracle cosmetic with the strange blemishes. They would have blamed it on the humors, on a poor diet, on the will of God, anything but the precious, expensive paste that made them so beautiful. There is a strange and sad piece of trivia from this period that highlights the general lack of understanding about skin health. To deal with blemishes and to purify the complexion, some women would engage in a practice called fructation, which involved applying hot, wet cloths to the face to open the pores, followed by astringent lotions. One of the most popular astringents, a solution containing lead. So to treat the blemishes caused by their lead makeup, they would apply a medicinal treatment, also containing lead. They were caught in a chemical echo chamber, unknowingly trying to put out a fire with gasoline. As the weeks go by, you notice more of these strange, grayish patches appearing. Your real face, the one you see for only a few brief minutes each night, is becoming a mottled, unhealthy minus-looking landscape. The fear of being unmasked grows more intense. You start to dread the cleansing process, the moment of truth in the mirror. The face looking back at you is becoming a stranger, a damaged version of yourself that you no longer recognize. And every morning, the application of the white mask feels less like an act of beautification and more like a desperate act of concealment. The relief it provides is immense. But it is the relief of a prisoner who is grateful for the comfortable familiarity of their cell. The nightly ritual of removing your makeup has now transformed from a simple cleansing task into a moment of quiet dread. The face that is revealed each evening is no longer the one you remember. The small, discolored patches have spread. Your underlying skin has taken on a permanent, dull, leaden hue, marked by areas of roughness and strange, web minus like fine lines that were never there before. It looks perpetually tired, unhealthy, and prematurely aged. The contrast between your two faces is becoming terrifyingly stark. There is the public face, the smooth, serene, white goddess that glides through the court, and there is the private face, this mottled, damaged, secret self that you only allow yourself to see in the most forgiving candlelight. The CER use is no longer just an enhancement. It has become a necessity. It is the makeup that never sleeps. Because the moment it is removed, the nightmare is revealed. You find yourself becoming increasingly reluctant to ever be seen without it. Even in the supposed privacy of your own home, you keep the mask on. You wait early, before your maids enter your chamber, to apply the first layer. You wear it all day, and you only remove it in the final moments before you extinguish the candle and plunge the room into absolute darkness. The idea of your husband, or even a trusted maid, catching a glimpse of your real face fills you with a profound sense of shame and panic. This creates a strange and isolating new reality for you. Your own skin has become your most closely guarded secret. You live with a constant, low-level fear of being discovered. What if you were to become suddenly ill in the middle of the night and the doctor had to be called? What if there were a fire, and you had to flee into the halls without a moment to prepare your face? These thoughts, once absurd, now flicker at the edges of your mind. You are not alone in this experience. This dependency was a common, unspoken reality for long-term users of CEUs. They became prisoners of their own cosmetic routine. One contemporary moralist, a man named Philip Tobias, wrote with scornful glee about this very phenomenon in his book The Anatomy of Abuses. He described how ladies who used these paints were loathsome to look upon when their faces were bare, and how they dared not go abroad without their masks and their visa RDS for fear of revealing their true monstrous appearance. While his language is cruel and exaggerated, the core observation is likely true. The makeup had become a crutch that had, over time, broken the leg it was meant to support. This leads to a fascinating and slightly tragic little piece of social history: the rise of night masks. Not the skincare masks we think of today, but literal masks. Some women, so horrified by their damaged skin, took to sleeping in soft velvet or silk masks, not to protect their complexion from the sun, but to hide it from their own husbands in the intimacy of the bedchamber. It's a detail that speaks volumes about the psychological toll of this beauty standard. Imagine a life where you can never, ever, let your guard down, where you can never show your true face, even to the person you are closest to. The historical debate here centers on the women's own awareness. Did they understand that the CER use was the direct cause of their skin's decay? Or did they fall into a tragic logical trap? It's possible they believed the opposite. They might have thought that they were suffering from some underlying skin malady, some corruption of the humors, and that the CER use was a kind of medicinal shield, a protective layer that was holding the ugliness at bay. In this view, the makeup wasn't the cause of the problem, but the only thing preventing a total disaster. They might have seen the grey, damaged skin as their true state, and the white paint as a necessary, healing balm. This would make their dependency even more profound and inescapable. You now find yourself in a state of constant maintenance. The CER use is no longer just for special occasions. It is for breakfast. It is for a quiet afternoon of reading. It is for every waking moment. The little pot of Venetian white, once a symbol of exciting transformation, is now a ball and chain. You start to calculate your supply. You worry about running out. You send for a new pot long before the current one is empty, just to be safe. The act of applying it has also changed. It's less of a joyful, artistic ritual and more of a grim, determined death-packling job. You find you need to use more of it now. A thicker layer to cover the increasingly uneven and discolored terrain beneath. The process takes longer. It requires more care, more precision, to ensure no hint of the grim reality beneath can peek through. One afternoon, a lady minus waiting, a young girl new to court, compliments your complexion with wide-side sincerity. Your skin is so perfect, she says, like polished ivory. You smile, a small, tight movement that won't crack your facial armor. Thank you, dear. You reply, your voice calm and steady, but inside, a cold wave of imposter syndrome washes over you. The compliment feels like a mockery, a testament to the lie you are wearing. The perfect face she sees as a fiction, and the truth is a monster you keep locked away. A monster that is, tragically, yourself. You are now trapped. The realization doesn't come in a sudden, dramatic flash, but as a slow, creeping dread that settles deep in your bones. You are living inside a gilded cage of your own skin, and the bars of this cage are forged from leaden vanity. The vicious cycle is now in full. Unforgiving motion, the more damage the CER use inflicts, the more CER use you must apply to hide that damage. And the more you apply, the faster the damage spreads. Your morning routine is now the most important part of your day. It is a frantic race against the truth. In the privacy of your chamber, you confront the mottled, greyish face in the mirror, a face that now looks like a poorly preserved fresco. The skin is thin in some places, coarse and bumpy in others. You can see a network of tiny broken veins around your nose and on your cheeks. It is the face of a stranger, and you hate it. Then, with a desperate sense of purpose, you begin the reconstruction. You apply the thick, white paste, and as the CER use spreads, it feels like you are literally holding your own face together. The crumbling facade is plastered over. The cracks are filled. The white mask is no longer about achieving beauty. It's about staving off collapse. When the final layer is buffed in the red is applied to your lips and cheeks, you can breathe again. You have successfully rebuilt the illusion for another day. The prisoner has gratefully returned to her cell. This escalating dependency had a very real economic consequence. Venetian CER use was not cheap. There was a luxury import, and the thicker and more frequent your applications became, the more of it you needed. Your expenditure on cosmetics, once a minor indulgence, has now become a significant line item in your personal budget. You find yourself spending more on the little pots of white paste than you do on books or even on new ribbons for your gowns. The cage is not just psychological, it's financial. This is where you might start to experiment with cheaper alternatives out of necessity, creating a private hierarchy of cosmetic use. You might use the good, expensive Venetian CER use for important court appearances, but for a regular day spent mostly at home, you might use a less refined, locally made whitener. This, of course, only compounds the problem. These cheaper versions often contained even higher concentrations of lead or other abrasive fillers, which would accelerate the skin damage, making your reliance on the good stuff for public appearances even more critical. Some historians argue that this cycle of damage and concealment is one of the most misunderstood aspects of Renaissance beauty. We tend to see the white face as a purely aesthetic choice, a matter of fashion, but for a long-minded term user, it ceased to be about fashion and became a matter of desperate personal maintenance. This minus frames the women who used it not as vain fashion victims, but as individuals trapped in a complex and damaging feedback loop from which there was no easy escape. One of the more tragic and bizarre details of this gilded cage relates to affection and human touch. How could you allow a loved one, a husband, a child, to kiss your cheek? A misplaced peck could leave a disastrous smear in the white facade, revealing the ugly truth beneath. Furthermore, the Ceruse itself was toxic. A child kissing their mother's cheek could inadvertently ingest a small amount of lead. Did women of the time know this? Probably not in a scientific sense, but they certainly knew that their makeup was a delicate, fragile construction that was not meant to be disturbed. This led to a culture of physical distance. The air kiss, that strange social gesture of kissing the space next to someone's cheek, may have some of its roots in this era. It was a way of showing affection without making physical contact. A perfect solution for a woman wearing a quarter-inch of fragile, toxic paint. The makeup, therefore, didn't just create a visual barrier. It created a very real physical one, isolating the wearer from the simple, spontaneous comfort of human touch. You feel this isolation acutely. When your husband speaks to you, you keep a subtle distance. When you play with your children, you are constantly aware of their hands, their faces, making sure they don't accidentally smudge your carefully constructed perfection. Your beautiful mask, the very thing you use to navigate society, is now preventing you from truly connecting with the people you love most. It is a profound and lonely paradox. The cage is closing in. You are a walking monument to a beauty ideal that is actively consuming you. Your real face is a secret you must guard with your life. Your finances are strained by your ever-minus growing need for the toxic paste, and you are walled off from true intimacy by the very mask you believe makes you desirable. You look in the mirror at the flawless white face, and for the first time, you don't see power or status. You see the elegant, pearlescent bars of a beautiful, inescapable prison, and you have the sinking feeling that you are the only one who holds the key, but you've long forgotten how to use it. The whispers about the dangers of cosmetics are not entirely new. While you and your fellow ladies at court are trapped in your cycle of application and concealment, a quiet debate simmers in the background, carried on in pamphlets, sermons, and scholarly texts. The criticism is not yet a mainstream roar, but it is a persistent, judgmental murmur. Most of it is directed at the Italian ointments, a catch-all term for the sophisticated, and therefore suspicious, cosmetics coming from the continent. You might encounter these arguments yourself, perhaps your husband, after listening to a particularly fiery sermon, makes a disapproving comment about the unnaturalness of your appearance, or perhaps you read a translated pamphlet that rails against the sin of vanity, arguing that to paint one's face is to critique God's own handiwork. Most of this criticism is moral or religious in nature. It frames makeup as a sign of a deceitful character and a corrupt soul. The preachers and polemicists argue that a woman who paints her face is trying to trick men into marriage, presenting a false advertisement of her beauty and youth. These moral arguments are easy enough for you to dismiss. They are the predictable rantings of men who do not understand the world you live in. They are hypocrites, you think, who publicly condemn the artifice while privately admiring the flawless faces at court. You and your friends might even have a good laugh at their simplistic, sanctimonious views. But underneath the moral outrage, there is a different, more troubling line of argument beginning to emerge. It is a debate rooted not in theology, but in a kind of early, observational medicine. A few physicians and authors are starting to notice a correlation between the use of these heavy cosmetics and a collection of strange ailments affecting aristocratic women. They don't talk about lead carbonate or absorption rates, that language doesn't exist yet. Instead, they use the vocabulary of their time, speaking of foul fumes that block the pores and venomous vapors that corrupt the skin. This is the heart of a fascinating historical debate that scholars still explore. How much did they really know? For centuries, the prevailing view was that people in the Renaissance were simply ignorant of the dangers. But more recent research into the texts of the period shows a more complex picture. There was a clear, if not scientifically precise, awareness that these substances could be harmful. You might come across a passage in a book of household remedies or a medical almanac. It might read something like this: beware the CER use of the Venetians. For though it renders the skin white as the lily, it is known to cause a withering of the flesh beneath, and to bring about a dryness of the spirit and a dimming of the eyes. It's poetic, not cynical, but the warning is there. The problem is that these warnings are buried alongside equally dire pronouncements against eating cold melons or sleeping in the moonlight. In a world full of mysterious dangers and folk wisdom, it's hard to know which warnings to take seriously. One of the most curious and specific accusations leveled against CER use was that it made women sterile. Several texts from the period claim that the cold nature of lead, remember, it was the metal of Saturn, a cold and distant planet, could extinguish the natural heat required for fertility. This was, from a scientific standpoint, tragically accurate. Lead poisoning is a known cause of infertility and miscarriage. The Renaissance observers had arrived at the right conclusion, but to a completely wrong, astrological and humoral minus-based line of reasoning. It's a perfect example of getting the right answer for the wrong reason, a common occurrence in the history of science. This specific fear of infertility adds another layer of tragic irony to your situation. You are using this makeup to secure or maintain your social standing, a standing which is fundamentally tied to your ability to produce heirs for your husband's lineage. The very tool you are using to uphold your dynastic duty may be the thing that prevents you from fulfilling it. The defenders of cosmetics have their own arguments. Of course, the sellers of CER use and other ointments would publish their own pamphlets, full of glowing testimonials. They would claim their products were not only harmless but beneficial, made from secret recipes that nourished the skin and preserved youth. They might argue that their CER use was made with a special process that removed the venom from the lead. A claim with no scientific basis but great marketing appeal. So you exist in a world of conflicting information. On one hand, the preacher tells you that your makeup will condemn your soul. On the other, a doctor hints it might be damaging your health. But on a third, far more compelling hand, the evidence of your own eyes tells you that it makes you beautiful, powerful, and accepted in the only world that matters. The immediate, tangible rewards of using CER use are so great that they easily overwhelm the vague, distant, and often contradictory warnings about its potential dangers. You choose to believe the marketing. You choose to believe that your brand, your pot of precious paste, is the safe one. You have to. The alternative is too terrifying to contemplate. You continue to put your faith in the little pewter pot, dismissing the warnings as baseless rumors. The science of your time offers no clear reason to be afraid. No concept of toxicology or cutaneous absorption, and yet, deep within your body, a silent and treacherous invasion is underway. To understand what is happening, we have to gently leave the 16th century for a moment and look at the simple, brutal chemistry of the element at the heart of our story. Lead. Lead is a chemical trickster. It is a master of disguise at the molecular level, and its treachery lies in its ability to mimic other, more essential elements that your body needs to function. The main element it impersonates is calcium. Think of your body as a complex and highly secure castle. The walls have specific gates, and each gate has a lock that will only open for a specific key. Calcium is one of the most important key minus holders in your entire kingdom. It is crucial for building strong bones, for transmitting signals through your nerves, for making your muscles contract, and for countless other vital processes. Your body has developed a sophisticated system of channels and pathways that locks on the gates to move calcium to exactly where it needs to go. Now, imagine lead. A lead atom, to the locks on your body's gates, looks remarkably similar to a calcium atom. It has a similar size and a similar electrical charge. It is, in essence, a master forger who has created a near-perfect copy of the calcium key. When you apply the CERUs to your skin, the lead carbonate doesn't just sit there. Slowly, inexorably, your skin absorbs it. It passes through the outer layers and finds its way into your bloodstream. And once it's in the blood, the trickery begins. The lead keys begin to circulate throughout your body, approaching the gates meant only for calcium, and the locks, fooled by the clever forgery, swing open. The lead enters your nerves, your muscles, your brain, and your bones, taking the place of the calcium that is supposed to be there. But lead is a terrible houseguest, unlike calcium, which does its job and then moves on. Lead settles in and refuses to leave. It disrupts the delicate machinery of your cells. In your nerves, it garbles the signals, like static on a line. In your muscles, it prevents them from contracting properly. In your brain, it interferes with the neurotransmitters that regulate thought and mood. And worst of all, it begins to accumulate in your bones. Your body, thinking it's calcium, incorporates the lead directly into your bone tissue. It becomes a part of your very skeleton. This is what makes lead poisoning so insidious and long-lasting. Your own bones become a slow-release reservoir of poison, leaking lead back into your bloodstream for years, even decades. After you stop being exposed to it, you are, quite literally, building your own poison into your foundations. This process of mimicry is not unique to lead. Many heavy metals fool the body in similar ways. But the Renaissance world's embrace of lead was particularly widespread. This is a point of quiet fascination for historians of science, the contrast between what they believed and what was actually happening. They saw lead, the metal of Saturn, as cold and heavy, associating it with melancholy and slowness. They weren't entirely wrong. The symptoms of lead poisoning, fatigue, depression, muscle weakness are a perfect match for the astrological character of Saturn. They were observing the effects with surprising accuracy, but their explanation for why it was happening was rooted in magic and astrology, not chemistry. There is another element that lead is known to mimic and disrupt iron. Iron is the key component of hemoglobin, the molecule in your red blood cells that carries oxygen. When lead gets into your system, it interferes with the body's ability to produce hemoglobin. This leads to a specific type of anemia. Your red blood cells become less effective at carrying oxygen, and your whole body begins to suffer from a subtle, chronic oxygen deprivation. This is why one of the classic, early symptoms of lead poisoning is a persistent, gnawing fatigue, a weariness that no amount of sleep can cure. You are starting to feel this yourself. You find yourself tiring more easily. The long nights at court leave you feeling utterly drained. Not just tired, but depleted in a way you've never felt before. You blame the late hours, the rich food, the stress of social obligations. You would never imagine that the cause is the very substance that gives you the energy to face that society in the first place. The treachery of this element is its silence. There is no pain as it enters your system. There is no alarm bell. It is a quiet, gradual takeover, happening at a level far too small to see or feel. Your body, with all its ancient wisdom, is being systematically fooled by a simple, heavy metal, a dull grey element that alchemists dreamed of turning into gold, but which was, in reality, far more powerful in its ability to imitate, to corrupt, and to destroy. The perfect white mask you wear on the outside is a mirror of the perfect, deadly disguise the poison is wearing on the inside. The changes are subtle at first, small eddies in the slow river of your daily life. You notice a persistent, strange taste in your mouth, It's a faint but cloying sweetness, with a metallic, coppery aftertaste, like sucking on a dull penny. It's there when you wake up in the morning, and it lingers throughout the day. A ghostly flavor that no amount of spiced wine or sugared fruit can fully erase. You mention it to your physician, who nods thoughtfully and blames an imbalance of the humors, perhaps an excess of phlegm, and prescribes a bitter herbal tonic that does nothing to help. What you are experiencing is one of the classic, textbook symptoms of lead poisoning, a phenomenon that doctors centuries in the future will know simply as lead colic. The sweet taste is the direct result of lead compounds interacting with the saliva in your mouth. It is the poison announcing its presence, but you do not speak its language. You only know that your world has begun to taste faintly of sweet, old metal. Along with the taste comes a recurring ache in your stomach. It's not a sharp pain, but a deep, grinding discomfort. A colic that comes and goes without reason. It makes you lose your appetite. The lavish banquets at court, once a source of pleasure, now seem daunting. The rich, heavy food sits uncomfortably in your stomach, and you find yourself merely pushing it around your plate with a silver fork. You are growing thinner, more fragile. Your friends and ladies minus and minus waiting notice your waning appetite. They compliment you on your slender figure, your delicate pallor, in an age where robust health can be seen as common. Your newfound fragility is interpreted as a sign of supreme aristocratic refinement. You look as ethereal as a fairy, one of them says, and you accept the compliment, even as the dull ache churns in your gut. They are admiring the symptoms of your slow poisoning, mistaking the signs of decay for the pinnacle of delicate beauty. This connection between lead and abdominal pain was one of the few that was widely recognized, even in your time, but primarily in men. It was known as Devonshire colic or painter's colic, because it was a common affliction among cider makers who used lead in their presses and painters who constantly handled lead-based pigments. Because it was seen as an occupational disease of working men, no one makes the connection to you, a noblewoman. The idea that your cosmetic routine could expose you to the same industrial ailment as a common house painter is simply unthinkable. The social gulf is too wide to bridge, even with a shared symptom. This brings us to a weirdly specific and rather ghoulish little fact from medical history. In an attempt to diagnose the cause of these mysterious colics, some physicians of the 17th and 18th centuries would examine a patient's gums. They were looking for something they called the lead line or Burton's linear thin, bluish-black line that appeared on the gums, right where they met the teeth. This line is caused by a reaction between circulating lead in the body and the small amounts of sulfur produced by bacteria in the mouth, which creates a deposit of lead sulfide in the gum tissue. It was a telltale sign of chronic lead exposure. You, of course, would never be diagnosed this way. A male physician would not be permitted such an intimate examination of a noblewoman's mouth. And besides, even if he were, your crimson, mercury-based lip paint would likely obscure the evidence. But if you were to look closely at your own gums in the privacy of your mirror, you might see it. A faint, dark, bruised-looking border beginning to form. Another secret blemish. Another sign of the poison's quiet, steady work. Historians still debate how widespread this gum line knowledge was in the 16th century. It becomes more documented later on, but some evidence suggests an early, observational link was being made. It's another one of those frustrating almost S in medical history, a clue that was present but not fully understood or applied where it was most needed. The sweet, slow poison is affecting more than just your physical health. It's beginning to cloud your mind. You find yourself becoming more irritable, prone to sudden flashes of anger over trivial matters. You snap at a maid for tying a ribbon incorrectly, or feel a wave of irrational fury at your husband for a careless comment. This is followed by periods of deep, unexplainable sadness, a melancholy that settles over you like a damp fog. You weep without knowing why. This is the lead at work in your brain, disrupting the delicate chemistry of your thoughts and emotions. The saturnine qualities that the alchemists wrote about melancholy, slowness, seriousness are now being chemically induced in you. You are, in a very real sense, becoming the living embodiment of the poison you wear. Your personality, once vibrant, is being ground down, replaced by a leaden moodiness that you mistake for the natural progression of age or stresses of your position. The poison is not just on your face, it is in your very soul. While your body and mind are slowly succumbing to the sweet poison, the men who created it are operating under a completely different set of beliefs. To understand why a substance so obviously harmful could be so widely celebrated, we have to step back into the strange, glimmering world of the alchemist. For them, lead was not just a toxic heavy metal. It was a substance of immense philosophical and spiritual importance. In the alchemical worldview, all metals existed on a spectrum of perfection. At the very bottom were the base, diseased metals like iron and copper. At the very top was the one, perfect, healthy metal gold. Gold was considered incorruptible, eternal, a tiny piece of the sun here on earth. All other metals, they believed, were simply on a journey. They were all striving, over geological time, to become gold. The alchemist's great work, the magnum opus, was to discover the secret, the philosopher's stone that could speed up this natural process of maturation. Where did lead fit into this cosmic hierarchy? Lead, which they associated with the planet Saturn, was considered the oldest and most mature of the base metals. It was right on the cusp of perfection. It was seen as heavy, ancient, and full of potential. They believed it had already undergone many stages of purification deep within the earth. It was almost there. It just needed one final push to complete its transformation into gold. This is why so many alchemical recipes for creating gold begin with lead as the primary ingredient. They weren't trying to turn something worthless into something valuable. They thought they were helping an old man cross the final street to his glorious home. This belief system completely colored their perception of lead's properties. When they performed the process you witnessed earlier, corroding lead plates with vinegar vapor to create lead carbonate, they didn't see it as simple corrosion. They saw it as a purification. They called the resulting white powder the white dove or spirits of Saturn, believing they had liberated the pure white soul and metal from its dull, grey body. The brilliant whiteness of the Ceruse was, to them, proof of its exalted nature. It looked pure, therefore it was pure. This is a point that historians of science find endlessly fascinating. The alchemists were brilliant practical chemists. They invented and refined techniques like distillation, sublimation, and crystallization that are still used today. Their observations were often meticulous, but their interpretations of those observations were filtered through a lens of mysticism, astrology, and metaphor. The debate continues as to whether alchemy was a genuine proto-minus science, laying the groundwork for modern chemistry, or if it was fundamentally a spiritual or philosophical pursuit that just happened to involve chemical apparatus. This brings us to one of the most wonderfully bizarre beliefs about lead from that period. Some alchemists, some physicians believed that since lead was so close to the perfection of gold, it possessed certain noble qualities that could be transferred to humans. They specifically thought it could be used to treat diseases that were considered impure or corrupting. Most notoriously, certain lead compounds were a key ingredient in ointments used to treat the symptoms of syphilis. The logic, twisted as it sounds to us, was that you could fight a corrupting disease with a maturing metal. You would be applying the supposed purity of lead to counteract the impurity of the illness. It is a horrifying thought, applying a potent neurotoxin to an already sick person, but it demonstrates the profound gap between their understanding and ours. They were not being malicious. They were operating with complete sincerity within their own framework of knowledge. They genuinely believed that lead, this ancient, heavy, almost minus perfect metal, had the power to heat and preserve. So when they sold you a pot of Venetian Ceruse, they weren't consciously selling you a poison. They were selling you a substance they believed was imbued with the preservative, perfecting qualities of a noble metal. The fact that it made your skin look like a flawless white statue was just further proof of its magical perfect in nature. It was making your face, in their eyes, as incorruptible as gold. This fundamental misunderstanding of the material world is at the very heart of your predicament. You are a victim not of malice, but of a beautiful, elaborate, and entirely wrong idea. You are wearing a philosophical concept on your face. You believe it is a shield, a mark of nobility and purity. The men who made it believed it was a step on the path to creating gold. But the lead itself, indifferent to all these human theories, continues its silent, chemical work, following its own immutable laws. It continues to mimic calcium, to disrupt your iron, to settle in your bones, and to slowly, methodically, take you apart from the inside out. The alchemist's great hope has become your body's silent tragedy. The silent invasion continues its slow, methodical march through your body. The metallic taste, the stomach pains, the leaden moods, these have become your new normal, a constant, no hum of unwellness you've learned to live with. But now, a new and much more visible symptom begins to appear, one that cannot be so easily hidden or ignored. It begins with your hair. Your hair has always been one of your finest features, thick, lustrous, and vibrant. It's the one part of your natural appearance you haven't had to conceal. But lately, you've noticed a change. It seems thinner when your maid brushes it in the morning. The brush comes away with a disturbing amount of loose strands. The thick braid you once wore with pride now feels limp and diminished. Your hair has lost its shine, its vitality. It looks dull, dry, and brittle. At first, you blame it on the harsh soaps used for washing, or perhaps the changing seasons. You try expensive conditioning treatments made from egg yolks and scented oils, but nothing seems to halt the slow, steady thinning. Panic, cold and sharp, begins to set in. Your face is a carefully constructed illusion. But your hair was supposed to be your one remaining truth. Now, that too is failing you. What you are witnessing is another classic, devastating effect of chronic lead poisoning. Lead interferes with the body's ability to synthesize keratin, the protein that is the primary building block of hair and nails. It also disrupts the absorption of essential minerals like zinc and sulfur, which are vital for healthy hair growth. The hair follicles themselves are being starved and poisoned, causing the strands to weaken, break, and fall out. This specific symptom, hair loss, became notoriously linked with the use of CERUs. Contemporary writers and satirists often commented on it. They would mock noblewomen for their thinning hair and their increasing reliance on elaborate wigs and hairpieces to cover up the problem. One poet, in a particularly cruel verse, wrote of a courtly lady whose beauty was all but made, from her painted face to the borrowed hair upon her head. This brings us to a fascinating point of historical debate among fashion and social historians. The latter part of the Elizabethan era and the period that followed saw a huge explosion in the popularity of elaborate, oversized wigs for both men and women. The common explanation is that this was simply a matter of fashion, a desire for bigger, more dramatic silhouettes, but some historians argue for a more practical and more tragic underlying cause. They suggest that the fashion for enormous wigs was, in part, a direct response to the widespread hair loss being caused by lead-based cosmetics. It's a chicken and egg scenario that is still debated. Did the wigs become fashionable, prompting people to shave their heads to wear them more comfortably? Or were people's hair already falling out, making large, fashionable wigs a necessary and very welcome solution? The truth is likely a combination of both. The trend started, and then it became incredibly convenient for the thousands of men and women whose own hair was quietly abandoning them. It's another example of a society adapting to a health crisis by turning it into a fashion statement. You find yourself forced to adopt these new fashions. You start weaving switches small sections of false hair into your own thinning locks to add volume. Soon, that is not enough. You commission your first full wig, an elaborate construction of real human hair, curled and styled and set upon a wire frame. It is heavy and hot, but when you put it on, You feel a sense of relief. The wig covers the problem completely. It is another mask, another layer of artifice to hide the decay underneath. Your daily routine now includes not just painting on a face, but putting on your hair as well. There's a sad and little minus known piece of the hair loss puzzle: the eyebrows. As we touched on before, the constant application of the lead paint directly onto the face would destroy the delicate hair of the eyebrows. Long-term users of CERUs were often left with no eyebrows at all. They would have to paint them on every morning with a brush and dark powder. This is why so many portraits of the era show women with unnaturally high, thin, perfectly arched brows. They weren't just plucked that way. They were often entirely artificial, painted onto a blank space where eyebrows used to be. Your own brows are now fading, becoming sparse and patchy. The daily ritual of drawing them back on becomes another essential, stressful step in your morning reconstruction. You are becoming a collage of artificial parts, a living assembly of paint and powder and borrowed hair. The woman you see in the mirror now is a triumph of engineering. Her face is a perfect, white surface of lead. Her cheeks are a youthful blush of mercury. Her eyebrows are delicate arches of soot. And her head is crowned with a magnificent, towering wig that is not her own. She is beautiful. She is fashionable. She is the pinnacle of aristocratic elegance, and almost nothing about her is real. The poison has not just taken your health, it has taken your very substance, forcing you to replace it, piece by piece, with a beautiful, empty lie. The slow dismantling of your body continues, moving from your skin to your hair, and now to a place that you keep hidden from the world: your mouth. The sweet, metallic taste is a constant companion, and the dull ache in your stomach comes and goes. But now, when you smile a small, tight, paint-preserving smile, you do so with a growing sense of dread. The poison is beginning to claim your teeth. You notice it first as a persistent soreness in your gums. They feel tender and inflamed, and they sometimes bleed when you eat something hard, like a crust of bread or a crisp apple. Then, you begin to see the changes. Your gums, which were once a healthy pink, are starting to look dark and purplish. They seem to be shrinking, pulling back from the base of your teeth in a process that will one day be called gum recession. This is to let it work again, in concert with its toxic cousin, mercury, which you have been diligently painting onto your lips each day. Both heavy metals are devastating to oral health. They restrict blood flow to the delicate gum tissue, causing it to weaken and die. The lead line we spoke of earlier, that dark blue-black stain, is now becoming more pronounced, a grim border between your sick gums and your teeth. And then, the worst part begins. Your teeth start to loosen in their sockets. One morning, while eating a piece of soft cheese, you feel a horrifying give. A molar, a tooth you have had your entire life, rubbles. You touch it with your tongue. It moves. A cold, nauseating fear floods your entire body. The process has begun. Lead interferes with the bone and connective tissues that anchor the teeth firmly in the jaw. As your bones are slowly saturated with lead, they lose their density and strength. The foundation holding your teeth in place is literally crumbling. Over the next few months, more teeth begin to loosen. They ache with a deep, throbbing pain. Chewing becomes a careful, strategic exercise. You learn to eat only soft food stews, potages, custards to avoid putting any pressure on your disintegrating dental structure. The decay is not just structural. The lead and other factors contribute to rapid tooth decay. Your teeth, once strong and white, begin to develop dark spots. They start to rot from the inside out. The pain can be excruciating, a throbbing agony that keeps you awake on your silken pillows at night. There are no root canals, no modern dentistry to save a dying tooth. The only remedy is extraction. This procedure is not performed by a skilled surgeon in a sterile environment. It is usually done by a local barber-surgeon, a man who cuts hair, shaves beards, and pulls teeth, often with the same set of unwashed tools. The process is brutal, a matter of brute force and a strong pair of pliers, with no anesthetic save for a large gulp of strong brandy. To avoid this terrifying prospect, you suffer in silence for as long as you can. This brings us to one of the great historical debates surrounding Queen Elizabeth I's later years. It is documented that she suffered from terrible dental problems. She had numerous black, decayed teeth, and lost many of them. Foreign ambassadors who were granted an audience with her often commented on her poor dental state and the difficulty they had in understanding her speech due to her missing teeth. The common explanation is that this was caused by her famous love for sugar, which was becoming a new and fashionable luxury in England. Her teeth, they say, simply rotted from all the sweet things she ate. However, a growing number of medical historians and scholars have proposed a compelling alternative theory. They argue that while the sugar certainly didn't help, the primary culprit for her catastrophic dental collapse was not the sugar, but the lead. The symptoms she displayed: blackened teeth, tooth loss, gum issues are all classic hallmarks of chronic lead poisoning. Her lifelong, heavy use of Venetian Ceruse is a far more likely cause for such a rapid and complete dental failure than sugar alone. It's possible that one of history's most famous sweet deaths was actually a case of heavy metal poisoning. To hide the decay and the gaps in your smile, you learn to speak and laugh without parting your lips. You perfect a closed mouth, enigmatic smile that is seen as demure and mysterious. Your bright, mercury-red lip paint, once a symbol of vibrancy, now becomes a true love concealment, a brightly colored curtain drawn over a scene of devastation. You might even resort to plump as small balls of cork or wax that you would place in your cheeks to fill out the hollow look that comes with tooth loss. It's another trick from the theatrical world of self-reconstruction. The smile that once faded from your own reflection has now faded from your life. Laughter is a risk. A wide grin is an impossibility. Your mouth, once a source of expression and pleasure, has become a source of pain and shame. A rotting crypt that you must keep sealed from the world. The poison has found yet another way to isolate you, to steal your joy and replace it with a silent, secret suffering, and the beautiful, painted lips that the world sees are the most profound lie of all. The physical decay is relentless. A systematic dismantling of your body from the outside in. Your skin is a ruin. Your hair is thin and brittle. Your smile is a carefully guarded secret. But the poison is not content with wrecking your physical form. It is now staging a full-scale assault on the one place you thought was safe: your mind. A gentle, creeping fog is beginning to roll into the landscape of your consciousness. It starts with your memory. You find yourself walking into a room and completely forgetting why you are there. You lose the thread of conversations, suddenly unable to recall what you were just talking about. Names of people you have known for years momentarily evaporate from your mind, leaving you grasping in an embarrassing, silent panic until they float back. At first, you dismiss it as tiredness, the same excuse you use for everything these days. But the episodes are becoming more frequent, more pronounced. You begin to rely on your lady's maid to remember your appointments, to lay out the correct attire for an occasion you have forgotten is happening. You start writing things down on scraps of parchment, little notes to yourself that you then promptly misplace. It is frustrating and deeply frightening. You, who once prided yourself on your sharp wit and quick recall, now feel as though your mind is a sieve, unable to hold on to thoughts for more than a few fleeting moments. This cognitive decline is the lead at work in your central nervous system. The lead ions, having crossed the blood-brain barrier by mimicking calcium, are now causing chaos among your neurons. They disrupt the release and reception of neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that allow your brain cells to communicate. The elegant, lightning-fast dance of thought and memory is being interrupted by a clumsy, heavy-footed intruder. The signals are getting crossed, delayed, or lost entirely. Your brain is, in a very real sense, being rewired into a state of permanent confusion. Along with the memory loss comes a profound change in your mood and personality. The irritability and melancholia felt earlier have now deepened into something more volatile and unpredictable. You experience strange, irrational fears. You might become convinced that the other ladies at court are plotting against you, or that your servants are spying on you. This paranoia is followed by periods of deep, lethargic apathy, where you can barely summon the energy to get out of bed, let alone face the exhausting ritual of painting on your public face. Your family and friends notice the change. They whisper that you have become difficult or melancholy. They might attribute it to female hysterics, a convenient, catch-minus-all diagnosis for any female emotional state that men found difficult to understand. No one, least of all you, would connect your changing mind to the pot of white paste on your dressing table. The idea that a skin cosmetic could alter the very fabric of your personality is a leap that no one in your century is equipped to make. This mental fog is one of the most debated and difficult minus-to-minus proof aspects of historical lead poisoning. While we can find physical evidence of lead in bones from this period, we cannot, of course, find direct evidence of its neurological effects on non-dead individuals. Historians and scholars are left to piece together clues from letters, diaries, and contemporary accounts. They look for descriptions of personality changes, memory loss, and erratic behavior in non-term users of CERUs. The case of Queen Elizabeth I is, once again, a focus of this debate. In her later years, she was known for her towering rages, her deep bouts of melancholy, and her increasingly paranoid and indecisive nature. The traditional historical view is that this was the natural result of a long, stressful reign and the anxieties of aging. But some medical historians have argued that her psychological symptoms align perfectly with the known effects of chronic lead poisoning. Could the Virgin Queen's famous temperament have been, in part, a side effect of her toxic makeup? It is a controversial but compelling theory, and one that the academic world continues to argue over. It challenges our very perception of her character, suggesting that some of what we interpret as political calculation or personal eccentricity may have been the tragic result of her brain chemistry altered by lead. You are living this theory. The fog in your mind grows thicker. Sometimes, you experience moments of true disorientation. You might look in the polished steel mirror at the white, dull minus-like face staring back at you and, for a terrifying second, not recognize the person beneath the paint. It is a moment of profound depersonalization, a feeling of being a ghost in your own body. The world, which once seemed so vibrant and full of possibility, now feels muted and distant, as if you are watching it through a thick, dirty pane of glass. Your thoughts, once sharp and clear, are now slow and syrupy. The poison is not just killing your body. It is stealing your mind, eroding your sense of self, and leaving a confused, frightened stranger in its place. The white mask of CERUs was meant to create a perfect, unchanging image, and in a horrible, ironic way, it is succeeding by slowly erasing the living, thinking, feeling person who wears it. Your own story, this slow, private disintegration, is not unique. You are just one of thousands suffering in silent, beautiful agony. But every few years, a story emerges that is so tragic and so public that it briefly pierces the collective denial. It becomes a cautionary tale, whispered in hushed tones at court, a temporary spectre that haunts the conversation before being conveniently forgotten again. The story of Maria Coventry, the Countess of Coventry, is one such tale. To understand her story, we must drift forward in time a little, to the middle of the 18th century. The fashion for a lead-white face has not abated. If anything, it has become even more extreme in the powdered, wigged world of the Georgian era. The look is still one of stark, artificial pallor. And Maria Coventry, born Maria Gunning, was perhaps its most famous and most beautiful practitioner. She and her sister, Elizabeth, were known as the Gunning sisters. They were Irish beauties from a respectable but impoverished noble family. When they arrived in London in the 1752s, they caused an immediate sensation. They were, by all accounts, breathtakingly beautiful. Crowds would gather in the streets just to catch a glimpse of them. Their fame was so immense that it was like the celebrity mania of our own time. They were the it girls of their day, and their beauty was their fortune. Maria, considered the more beautiful of the two, soon married the wealthy and powerful Earl of Coventry. She became the Countess of Coventry, a leader of high society, a celebrated hostess, and a powerful fashion icon. Her image was everywhere, in portraits and popular prints, and the defining feature of that image was her impossibly perfect, flawlessly white complexion, achieved through a copious, daily application of Venetian Ceruse. She was famous for it. She would reportedly paint her face in the morning and not remove the mask until she went to bed. A prisoner to her own perfect image. She was living the dream you once had. She had leveraged her beauty into immense wealth and status. She was admired, envied, and imitated. For a few short years, she was the undisputed queen of London society. But the poison she wore on her face every day was keeping a meticulous tally. The end came swiftly and cruelly, at the height of her fame, still only in her late 20s. Maria's health began to fail, a strange, persistent illness took hold. She suffered from a languishing sickness, as it was described at the time. She grew weak and thin. She was plagued by constant fevers, aches, and pains. Her famous beauty, the very foundation of her existence, began to collapse. Her doctors were baffled. They subjected her to all the useless and often harmful remedies of the day: bleeding, purging, bizarre herbal concoctions. Nothing worked. The Countess, the most beautiful woman in England, was wasting away before the public's eyes. The most horrific part of her decline was what happened to her face. The lead, which she had so diligently applied for years, had done its work. Her skin, underneath the paint, was a ruined landscape. But now, as she grew too weak to maintain the facade, the truth was revealed. According to contemporary accounts, her face was disfigured by sores and blemishes. The beautiful mask had shattered, and the reality it had concealed was too terrible to behold. She spent her final months in seclusion, refusing to see anyone, ashamed to let the world witness the ruin of her celebrated beauty. She died in 1760. At the age of just 27, her death was a genuine shock to the nation. The cause was officially listed as consumption, or tuberculosis, a common and convenient diagnosis for any wasting illness. But many people, even at the time, suspected the true culprit. The whispers were unavoidable. Her famous, lifelong devotion to her toxic cosmetics was seen as the real reason for her demise. She had, as one observer bluntly put it, been killed by white paint. The story of the Countess of Coventry became a potent cautionary tale. Satirists and moralists seized upon it, using her tragic end as the ultimate example of the deadly price of vanity. For a short time, there was a palpable sense of fear surrounding the use of lead-based cosmetics. Some ladies at court reportedly swore off CER use, at least for a while. But the power of fashion is a stubborn and forgetful thing. The memory of Maria's terrible end soon faded. The allure of the white, flawless face was too strong to resist. Within a few years, the little pots of lead paste were back on the dressing tables, and the lesson of her story was lost, dismissed as a tragic but unique case. This is a recurring pattern that historians of public health often observe. A disaster happens. There is a brief period of public outcry and caution, and then, slowly, complacency sets in and the dangerous practice resumes. The debate over whether Maria's story actually changed anything in the long run is ongoing. Some argue it was a key moment that planted the seeds for the eventual decline of the fashion. Others contend it was a mere blip, a sensational story that ultimately had little lasting impact on the day-to-day habits of the elite. As you sit in your own chamber, feeling the familiar weight of the CER use on your skin and the unfamiliar fog in your mind, you might hear this story whispered by your maids, and for a moment, you would feel a chill of recognition. You would see your own story reflected in hers, but the trap is already too deep. To stop now would be to reveal your own decay. And so, like everyone else, you push the cautionary tale from your mind, pick up your brush, and continue to paint. While you and your fellow nobles are trapped in your silent, white-minus-faced suffering, another group of people is watching you with a keen and increasingly critical eye. They are the writers, the playwrights, and the satirists of your age, and they are not impressed. In their work, they begin to hold up a different kind of mirror to your society, one that reflects not a polished ideal, but a cracked and absurd reality. The pointed pen of the satirist is beginning to find its mark. In the bustling, crowded theatres of London, you might see a new play by a witty, up-minus and minus coming writer. The plot might involve a foolish old lord trying to court a beautiful young woman, and on stage, the actor playing the lady of the house would appear with a face coated in a comically thick layer of white paint, with two perfect, round, bright red circles on her cheeks. When she speaks, her face remains in a vingled still, her voice a monotone. The audience roars with laughter. They recognize the caricature immediately. It is you. It is the Countess. It is every noblewoman at court. These theatrical portrayals were often the most public and effective form of criticism. They took the revered aesthetic of the aristocracy and turned it into a visual punchline. The serene, immobile face that you cultivate for its nobility is presented on stage as a sign of foolishness and artificial. The play might include a scene where the lady's face cracks when she tries to laugh, or where a clumsy suitor smudges her cheek, revealing a patch of hideous skin beneath. It's comedy, but it's comedy with a sharp, critical edge. Beyond the stage, this mockery found its way into popular poems and pamphlets. Satirists, often writing anonymously to avoid the wrath of the powerful people they were mocking, would pen scathing verses about the painted ladies of the court. They would use vivid, and often crude, language to describe the reality behind the beautiful facade. One common theme was the idea of a shopping list for beauty. A poet might write a work titled A Catalogue of a Lady's Charms, which would then proceed to list, item by item, where her beauty actually came from: her hair from a shop on Fleet Street, her teeth from the jaw of a sheep, her complexion from a pot of Italian plaster. This was a way of constructing the illusion, of showing that this celebrated beauty was not natural or divine, but a commodity, something bought and assembled. Another favorite target was the sheer deception of it all. Writers would tell stories of men who courted and married what they thought was a beautiful young woman, only to wake up the morning after the wedding to find a wrinkled old hag lying next to them, her face having been washed off in the basin. These are, of course, wild exaggerations fueled by misogyny, but they tapped into a real social anxiety about authenticity and deceit. This leads to a quiet debate among literary historians. Was this satire genuinely trying to warn women about the dangers of these cosmetics, or was it simply using them as an easy target to critique the aristocracy and female vanity in general? The answer is likely both. Some writers were undoubtedly concerned moralists who saw the practice as genuinely corrupting. Others were probably just sharp-witted opportunists who knew that making fun of the rich and powerful was a good way to sell pamphlets and theater tickets. And many were likely driven by a deep-seated anxiety about female power and autonomy. The woman who could paint on a new face was, in a sense, a woman in control of her own image. And that was a frightening concept for many men. One of the most specific and peculiar details that the satirists latched onto was the smell. As we've noted, the chemical cocktail of lead, mercury, vinegar, and perfumes often created a strange and potent aroma. The satirists loved this. They would describe noble women as walking pomander-esque or ambulatory perfume shops. The poet Alexander Pope, in the 18th century, wrote a famous satirical poem called The Rape of the Lock, which, while a bit later than your time, perfectly captures this spirit. He describes the lady's dressing table not as a place of beauty, but as a kind of altar laden with puffs, powders, pouches, Bibles, billet-minders dough, He puts cosmetics on the same level as love letters and religious books, showing how vanity had become a new kind of religion. As a member of the class being mocked, you would likely react to this satire with disdain. You would see it as the crude, jealous ramblings of the lower classes, who simply couldn't understand or afford the refined tastes of their betters. You and your friends might dismiss it as vulgar and unfunny, but you can't entirely escape it. The words have a way of sticking in your mind. The next time you see a row of perfectly white minus-spaced women at a state dinner, you might, for a fleeting second, see them through the satirist's eyes not as a gallery of serene goddesses, but as a collection of painted dolls. The laughter from the theatre seems to echo, faintly, in the silent, grand halls of the palace. The satirist's pointed pen can't cure your illness or free you from your gilded cage, but it can do something almost as powerful. It can make you, and the world around you, start to look just a little bit ridiculous. While the satirists are mocking you in public, a much quieter and more serious conversation is taking place in the private studies of physicians and the lecture halls of medical schools. The doctors are beginning to issue their own warnings, not with the sharp wit of a playwright, but with the cautious, measured language of early medical science. Their voices are not yet loud enough to cause a revolution, but they are planting the seeds of doubt that will eventually, slowly, lead to the downfall of the white minus-faced ideal. You might not read these medical texts yourself. They are written in dense Latin or technical English, intended for other physicians, but the ideas within them begin to trickle down. Your own family doctor, a man you have trusted for years, might start to ask more pointed questions during his visits. He might inquire, with a new and specific curiosity, about your cosmetic routine. He doesn't have the words lead poisoning or toxicology in his vocabulary. Instead, he speaks in the language of his time, a language of humors, miasmas, and blockages. He might gently suggest that the thick unguent you apply to your skin is sealing the pores and preventing the natural vapors of the body from escaping. This, he might explain, could cause the vapors to build up inside you, leading to the melancholy, the stomach pains, and the general languor you are experiencing. His theory is, from a modern perspective, entirely wrong in its mechanics, but his observation, his linking of the cosmetic to the symptoms, is tragically correct. He is like a man seeing smoke coming from a house and correctly identifying that there is a fire, even if he believes the fire is caused by angry spirits rather than faulty wiring. The medical community of the 16th to 18th centuries was a fragmented and contentious place. There was no single, universally accepted medical truth. The Galenic doctors, who followed the ancient Greek physician Galen's theories of the four humors, were in a constant state of debate with the Paracelsian doctors, who followed the more radical, chemically minus-focused ideas of the alchemist Paracelsus. This is a point of ongoing fascination for medical historians, the clash of these old and new schools of thought. The Galenists would argue that the Ceruse, being made of lead, had a cold and dry nature, which was dangerously disrupting the balance of your humors. The Paracelsians, on the other hand, might argue that the problem wasn't the coldness of the lead, but a specific toxic principle within the substance itself, a kind of quintessence of poison. They were both groping in the dark, but the Paracelsians, with their focus on specific chemical agents, were stumbling in a direction that was slightly closer to the truth as we now know it. One of the strangest and most specific medical warnings to emerge from this period had to do with lightning. A number of medical and scientific texts from the 17th and 18th centuries contained stark warnings to painted ladies to avoid going outside during a thunderstorm. They believed that the lead and other metallic compounds in the face paint would attract lightning. One French writer famously recounted the story of a lady of quality whose face was terribly disfigured by a lightning strike that was supposedly drawn to her makeup. Is this scientifically plausible? Almost certainly not. The amount of metal in face paint would be far too small to have any significant effect on the path of a lightning bolt. It's more likely a piece of scientific folklore, a dramatic and memorable way to illustrate the unnatural and dangerous properties of these cosmetics. It's a wonderfully weird example of early modern risk assessment. where the fear of a freak lightning strike was seen as a legitimate reason to avoid a certain beauty product. As these medical concerns spread, you might notice a subtle shift in the advice you receive. Your doctor might stop prescribing lead-based ointments for your skin blemishes and instead suggest a simple herbal wash. He might gently advise you to air your skin more often, to spend some time each day without the plaster on. This is a quiet but significant change. It is the beginning of a medical retreat from lead as a therapeutic and cosmetic agent. But this advice presents you with an impossible dilemma. To air your skin would be to reveal the very damage that the paint is hiding. The doctor's sound medical advice is a social impossibility. You are trapped. You might lie to him, assuring him that you are taking his advice, while privately continuing the daily ritual of spackling over the ruins. You need the paint to face the world, even if the doctors are now telling you it's killing you. The doctor's quiet warning represents a crucial turning point. The problem of bad makeup is slowly moving out of the realm of morality and into the realm of public health. It is no longer just a sin. It is becoming a sickness. The voices of the physicians are still mostly ignored, drowned out by the louder dictates of fashion. But they are creating a body of knowledge, a collection of observations and warnings that will be built upon by future generations. The candle of science is still flickering on dim, but it has been lit, and it is beginning to cast a long, revealing shadow on your little pot of poison. The warnings from the satirists and the doctors have been echoing in the back of your mind, but it is a single, private moment that finally shatters the illusion. It happens on an ordinary evening. You are in your chamber, going through the nightly ritual of removing your mask. You have performed this task thousands of times. It is a grim but familiar routine. Tonight, however, is different. You have just come from a particularly long and stressful court event. You are more tired than usual. A deep, bone-weary exhaustion that feels as if it has settled into your very marrow. Your hands are trembling slightly as you begin the process of cleansing. You scrape away the thickest layers of CE used with your ivory tool. Then you take a cloth soaked in your cleansing lotion and begin to wipe away the remaining film of white. As the paint comes away, you lean closer to the polished steel mirror, squinting in the flickering candlelight. And then you see it. It's not just the familiar grayish pallor, the rough patches, or the fine lines. Tonight, you see the face of a complete stranger. A much older stranger. The skin sags in ways you never noticed before. The lines around your eyes and mouth have deepened. No longer fine webs but deep, etched grooves. Your cheeks, which should have a youthful plumpness, seem hollowed out, sunken. The bluish lead line on your gums seems darker, more stark. The face staring back at you from the dim, wavering reflection is not just unhealthy. It is grotesque. It is a death mask, not of placid marble, but of decaying flesh. The person in the mirror is you. And yet it is not you. It is what the poison has made of you. In that moment, something inside you breaks. The years of denial, the carefully constructed walls you built around your secret, all come crumbling down. The lies you told yourself that it was just a skin irritation, that your brand of use was safe, that the symptoms were caused by stress or a poor constitution all evaporate in the face of the horrifying truth in the mirror. The mask you have been wearing was not hiding a few blemishes. It was hiding a ruin. It was concealing a slow, creeping death of your own face. The poison hasn't just made you sick. It has stolen your youth, your vitality, your very identity, and left this ravaged, alien thing in its place. A wave of nausea and self-loathing washes over you. You think of all the years, all the money, all the painstaking effort you have poured into this destructive ritual. You think of the compliments on your perfect skin, and they now sound like the cruelest mockery. You have been praised for your own destruction. This moment of unmasking, of confronting the reality beneath the paint, is a deeply personal and psychological turning point that historians can only guess at. They can document the recipes and the symptoms, But they cannot know the precise moment when a woman finally understood the terrible bargain she had made. Was it a gradual dawning, or a sudden, shattering revelation like the one you are having now? There's a subtle academic debate about this moment of realization. Some social historians argue that the women were, in a sense, complicit, choosing to sacrifice their real face for the social capital of the painted one. They suggest the women knew, on some level, what was happening, but the trade minus of was worth it. Others, leaning more on medical history, argue for a more tragic interpretation that the cognitive effects of the lead poisoning itself, the memory loss, the confusion, the mental fog may have prevented them from making the logical connection. How can you solve a puzzle when the poison you're investigating is actively destroying your ability to reason? You stumble back from the dressing table, your heart pounding. You look at your hands, and they seem alien to you. You are living in a poisoned body. The realization is so profound, so overwhelming, that you feel you might faint. For the first time in years, you do not complete your nightly routine. You leave the traces of the cleansing balm on your raw skin. You don't apply the soothing night cream which, ironically, may also contain lead. You simply pull the curtains around your bed and collapse into the darkness. Your mind reeling. Sleep does not come. You lie there in the dark, and for the first time, you feel the full weight of the gilded cage. You see the bars. You feel the lock, and you understand, with a terrible, chilling clarity, that you have been both the prisoner and the jailer all along. The unmasking in the mirror was not just about seeing your skin. It was about seeing the truth. And the truth is that you have allowed yourself to be consumed by a beautiful, deadly lie. The question that now haunts the darkness of your room is a simple and terrifying one. Is it too late to escape? The morning after your shattering revelation dawns cool and grey. For the first time in years, you do not reach for the pot of Ceruse. You stare at it on your dressing table, the heavy, familiar pewter pot, and you see it for what it is, not a vessel of beauty, but a chalice of poison. The thought of spreading that cold, toxic paste on your already ruined skin is now repulsive. You have made a decision. You will not do it. You will not rebuild the cage. This act of quiet rebellion is terrifying. You know that to face the world without your mask is to expose your deepest, most shameful secret. You will be subject to the pitying glances, the shocked whispers, the cruel judgments of the very society you tried so hard to conquer. But the fear of the poison is now, finally, greater than your fear of social ruin. As the decades of the 18th and early 19th centuries unfold, you are not alone in this decision. Slowly, glacially, the tide begins to turn against the white-faced ideal. The fall of this deadly fashion is not a sudden event, but a slow, gradual erosion, caused by a confluence of changing ideas. One of the most powerful forces is the rise of a new philosophical and aesthetic movement, Romanticism. The Romantics champion nature, emotion, and individuality. They rejected the stiff, artificial formality of the aristocracy. They celebrated the natural look faces with genuine color, expressive features, and the healthy glow that you once so despised. A pale, ignoble, painted face was beginning to look not noble, but old-fashioned, dishonest, and faintly ridiculous. The satirist joke was becoming the mainstream view. At the same time, the warnings from the medical community were growing louder and more specific. Doctors were now publishing articles in popular magazines, not just scholarly journals, explicitly warning of the dangers of lead-based cosmetics, the link between the paint and the horrific symptoms, the skin decay, the hair loss, the colic, the paralysis was becoming common knowledge. The story of Maria Coventry was no longer a forgotten piece of gossip. It was now used as a prime example in medical case studies. There is a fascinating, though debated, little piece of trivia that might have contributed to this growing awareness. It's called the gout of the rich. Gout, a painful inflammatory arthritis, was rampant among the upper classes of this period. For centuries, it was blamed on their rich diet of meat and wine. But modern science has shown that another major cause of gout is, in fact, lead poisoning. Lead damages the kidneys and interferes with their ability to excrete uric acid, leading to the painful crystals that cause gout. So the disease of kings that plagued the men may have been caused by the same thing that was poisoning their wives' lead. The men were ingesting it from their lead-minus lined wine vessels and pewter plates, while the women were absorbing it through their skin. The entire aristocracy was, in a sense, slowly poisoning itself. This shared affliction, some historians argue, may have helped to finally make the dangers of lead undeniable. As the scientific and cultural tide turns, a new concept of beauty begins to emerge. The ideal is no longer a static, perfect mass. It is a face that reflects a healthy, virtuous, and natural life. Looking healthy becomes the new status symbol, a delicate, rosy flush. The very thing you once tried to obliterate is now desirable, a sign of a wholesome lifestyle. Cosmetics do not disappear, of course. They simply change. The demand for opaque, lead-minus-based whiteners plummets. In their place, new, lighter products become popular. Women now use a fine dusting of rice powder to reduce shine, a bit of rouge made from carmine or plant extracts to give their cheeks a natural blush, and balms to make their lips look soft and dewy. The goal is no longer to create a mask, but to subtly enhance one's natural features. The age of the painted doll is ending, and the age of natural beauty is beginning. This shift represents a fundamental change in the relationship between a woman and her face. The idea that one should embrace, rather than erase, one's natural appearance takes root. The concept of skincare, as we might understand it, begins to develop. Instead of covering the skin with paint, women are encouraged to improve it through cleansing, moisturizing, and healthy living. For you, this transition is a painful and difficult one. You have stopped using the Ceruse, but the damage is done. Your skin will never fully recover. Your health is permanently impaired. You must now navigate a world that celebrates the very natural beauty that your choices have forever cost you. You wear the scars of a fallen fashion, but you are free. The gilded cage is open. The daily, frantic ritual of reconstruction is over. You can laugh without fear of cracking your face. You can allow your husband to kiss your cheek. You can live in your own skin, damaged as it is, without the constant, gnawing fear of being unmasked. The fall of the white ideal was not just a change in fashion for thousands of women like you. It was a quiet, personal emancipation. The little pewter pot of Venetian Ceruse now sits on a dusty shelf at the back of a cabinet, a relic of the bygone era. The great houses and palaces are no longer filled with the sea of identical white faces. Instead, you see a variety of complexions, a gallery of individuals. The tyranny of the white ideal is broken. Its fall was slow, messy, and long overdue, but it has fallen, and you, with your damaged skin and fragile health, are a living testament to the battle that was fought. As you sit by a window, the warm sun on your face says, "Son, you are no longer terrified of." You might reflect on the strange journey you've taken. It was a journey that promised beauty, power, and perfection, but delivered only decay, isolation, and a profound loss of self. The mask that was supposed to elevate you ended up consuming you. This entire historical episode, from the alchemist's workshop to the satirist's pen, now leaves us with a lingering question, one that historians and sociologists continue to explore. Why? Why did this deadly fashion persist for so long, even when the dangers were becoming increasingly apparent? There is no single, simple answer. It was a perfect storm of factors. It was the immense social pressure to conform, the power of a queen's example, and the tangible rewards of status and admiration. It was the lack of clear, scientific knowledge, a world where medical warnings were tangled up with moral condemnation and superstitious folklore. It was the insidious nature of the poison itself, a slow, creeping enemy that did its work so silently that it was easy to deny. And perhaps most powerfully, it was the simple, human desire to be beautiful. A desire so strong that it can make us believe in magic in a pot and ignore the quiet voice of reason. The story of Venetian Ceruse feels distant, a bizarre and morbid tale from a less enlightened time. We look back and shake our heads at their ignorance, their vanity, their willingness to suffer so terribly for such a strange and artificial ideal. But perhaps the story is not as distant as it seems. The specific ingredients have changed. Of course, we no longer knowingly slather our faces with leadened mercury. But the echoes of your story can be found in our own mirrors, in the glossy pages of our magazines, and in the endless, scrolling feeds of our digital lives. The desire to present a perfect, flawless, blemish-free face to the world has not gone away. It has simply shifted. We may not use lead paint, but we use digital filters that smooth our skin into an inhuman perfection, creating a new kind of artificial mask. We chase after youth and death flawlessness with a dizzying array of modern potions, creams, serums, injections, and procedures, some of which come with their own risks and whispered warnings. The vicious cycle you were trapped in also has its modern parallels. The more we see digitally perfected images of others, the more we feel our own natural appearance is inadequate, and the more we filter undead at our own images, the more stark the contrast becomes between our online persona and the real person in the mirror, creating a new kind of private shame. We too can become prisoners of the beautiful, artificial faces we create for ourselves. The debate about what is natural versus artificial continues with the same passion, just with a different vocabulary. The line between self minus care and obsessive self minus alteration is still a blurry one, and the marketplace is still full of promises, of miracle products and transformative procedures that whisper to our deepest insecurities. The strange, historical tidbit of women painting blue veins on their skin to prove their blue-blooded status seems absurd, until we think about the modern trends we follow to signal our own status, the brands we wear, the places we are seen, the lifestyles we project online. The goal is the same: to use our appearance to tell a story about who we are, or who we want to be. Your story is not just a history of a dangerous cosmetic. It is a timeless parable about the human cost of impossible beauty standards. It is a story about the masks we wear, both literal and metaphorical, and the danger of forgetting who we are beneath them. It reminds us that the pursuit of an external ideal can sometimes lead to an internal decay, and that the most beautiful face is often the one that is brave enough to be real. As you look out the window, you have survived. You are a ruin, perhaps, but a beautiful, living ruin. You have come out on the other side, and your story, whispered down through the centuries, serves as a quiet, gentle, and eternal warning. And now, as our time together draws to a close, the details of the story begin to soften, the sharp edges of history blur, becoming as gentle and indistinct as a watercolor painting left in a soft rain. The faces of the queen and the countess fade, their stark white complexions dissolving into the quiet darkness behind your eyes. The memory of the alchemist's fire and the satirist's pen grows distant, their sounds muffled by the growing stillness around you. You can let them go now. All of them. The story has served its purpose. It has been a gentle boat, carrying you across the waters of the day, and now it is a ride at a calm and quiet shore, the shore of your own deep and peaceful rest. You can feel the gentle weight of your own body, a safe and welcome anchor in the soft sea of your bed. The world of the past has dissolved, leaving only this present moment, this profound and simple quiet. The tale is told. If your mind is still gently wandering, let it wander to the peaceful corners of your own memories, or perhaps to the formless, gentle landscapes of an approaching dream. Good night, and may you find the deepest rest